The Four Immeasurables. Most people who encounter Buddhist meditation know about loving kindness, metta. Fewer have heard of karuna, compassion. Almost no one knows about mudita. And very few understand why, without the fourth, equanimity, the other three collapse. By the end of tonight, you'll see why your own kindness keeps running out, and what the Buddha actually said to do about it. The four brahmavihāras, Buddhism's four practices of the heart, are not four separate meditations. They are one system, expressed through a single identical template in the canon. Tonight, the complete system, and why all four are necessary. In the last few weeks, we've explored Rumi's love, a love that concentrates toward one divine beloved until the self dissolves into it. Tonight, a different architecture of love. Not one beloved, all beings. Not dissolution, expansion. Same human territory, different map. Chapter 1. One template, four expressions. The four are these: metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha. Goodwill, compassion, appreciative joy, equanimity. The word brahmavihāra means divine abiding or noble dwelling place, a place the mind can rest. Four such places traditionally, though in some translations you will see four immeasurables, because the canon describes each of them with the same word, apamana, without measure, boundless. Before we go further, one translation note. The Pali term metta has two main renderings in English. Bhikkhu Bodhi translated as loving kindness. Ṭhānissaro Bhikkhu translated as goodwill. Both are defensible. Both are reading the same Pali. Ṭhānissaro's argument is that metta is cognate with mitta, friend, that it is a wish or intention, not a feeling, and that it should be distinguished from pema, personal affection, the kind that has a specific someone at its center, the kind that can turn into resentment when that someone disappoints. Goodwill, in his reading, is broader, a wish for happiness, extended without condition. For tonight, I will use both translations, depending on which English word the moment requires. The question this chapter answers is simple. Are these four separate practices? Four meditations, four moods, four exercises? Or are they one practice with four faces? The canon itself answers this question, and the answer is built into the very sentences the canon uses. There is one passage in the Anguttara Nikaya, AN 4.125, that may be the cleanest demonstration of system thinking in the entire Pali Canon. The Buddha is speaking about a person who develops metta, goodwill. He describes the practice this way in Ṭhānissaro's translation: keeping pervading the first direction, then the second, the third, the fourth, above, below, all around, everywhere, and in every respect the all-encompassing cosmos, with an awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. Pause on that for a moment. The geometry of the practice is striking. You are not directing this awareness at a particular person. You are not even directing it at all beings as a conceptual category. You are radiating it in every direction. First, second, third, fourth, above, below, all around. Like a light that has been turned on in the middle of a room with no walls. The image is spatial. The image is immeasurable. The image is total. Now, here is the point. The Buddha says the same thing about karuna, word for word. Pervading the first direction, the second, the third, the fourth, above, below, all around, with an awareness imbued with compassion, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, He says the same thing about mudita. Word for word, he says the same thing about upekkha. Word for word, 4 qualities, 1 formula, repeated 4 times in succession in the same sutta. The same identical sentence, only the name of the quality changes. The canon is making a structural point. It is not saying, here are 4 practices that happen to share a method. It is saying, there is one practice. It has 4 expressions. Look at the sentence. The sentence is the system. The same sutta, AN 4.125, then tells us where this practice leads. The person who develops metta, the Buddha says, after the breakup of the body, after death, reappears in the company of the devas of Brahma's retinue, the lowest of the Brahma worlds. The lifespan in that world is 1 eon. Karuna takes you higher, to the Abhasara, the radiant devas, 2 eons. Mudita, higher still, the Subha Kinha, 4 eons. And upekkha, the highest of the 4, the Vihapala, the devas of great fruit, 500 eons, for the Brahmins the Buddha was speaking to. And we will return to those Brahmins in a moment. These were the goals. These were the destinations their own religious tradition pointed toward. The Brahma world, communion with Brahma, long, beautiful, exalted lives in celestial realms. But, and here is where the Buddha quietly turns the entire framework around. The person who develops these practices alone, AN 4.125 notes, who is what the canon calls run-of-the-mill, who has not awakened, eventually returns, after the eon expires, to hell, the sutta says, or the animal realm, or the realm of the hungry ghosts. The Brahma world is exalted, but it is not the end of the journey. It is still samsara. It is still the wheel, practiced alone, without insight. The brahmavihāras are perhaps the most beautiful dead end in all of Buddhism. They take you to the highest rooms of the conditioned cosmos, and then they leave you there. This is why one of the strangest and most quietly radical scenes in the entire Pali Canon takes place in the Subha Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 99. A young Brahmin named Subha comes to the Buddha and asks about the path to the Brahma world. The Buddha does not laugh. He does not dismiss the goal. He teaches this young man in earnest the path to the very destination Subha's own tradition pointed toward. And the path he teaches is, precisely, the cultivation of the 4 brahmavihāras. In Bodhi's translation of MN 99, the Buddha tells Subha, this is the genuine path to communion with Brahma. It is superior to ritual. It is superior to sacrifice. This, the systematic radiation of goodwill, compassion, appreciative joy, and equanimity in all directions. This will take you where your tradition wants you to go. It is one of the most generous moments in the canon. The Buddha is meeting Subha exactly where Subha is. He is honoring the Brahmin's goal. He is also, and Subha may not have caught this, pointing out that this destination is real, and it is not the destination that solves the problem the Buddha himself solved. The Brahma world is real. The Brahma world is beautiful. The Brahma world is not liberation. Which brings us to the next sutta in the collection, Anguttara Nikaya 4.126. The Buddha is still speaking about the 4 brahmavihāras. He uses, once again, the exact same pervasion formula, pervading the first direction, second, third, fourth, above, below, all around, with an awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable. The practice is identical. The formula is identical. The mind that arises is identical. And then, one move. Instead of resting in that immeasurable awareness, savoring it, longing for it, the noble disciple turns the lens of insight onto the immeasurable awareness itself. The Buddha's exact phrasing, in Ṭhānissaro's translation of AN 4.126, the disciple regards whatever phenomena there are connected with form, feeling, perception, fabrications and consciousness as inconstant, stressful, a disease, a cancer, an arrow, painful, an affliction, alien, a disintegration, an emptiness, not self, whatever phenomena, including, and this is the move, the very phenomena of the brahmavihāra state, the boundless, immeasurable, exalted awareness that has just been cultivated. Even that the disciple sees as impermanent, even that as conditioned, even that as not self. The result, the Buddha says, at the breakup of the body, the disciple appears in conjunction with the devas of the pure abodes. This is the destination of the non-returner, the anagam. From the pure abodes, there is no falling back. This is not a long, beautiful stay in samsara. This is the second to last stop on the path out of samsara entirely. So here is the pivot the entire video turns on. Read these two suttas side by side. AN 4.125. Brahmavihāra alone leads to the Brahma world, still samsaric. AN 4.126. Brahmavihāra plus insight applied to the brahmavihara state itself leads to the pure abodes, non-return. The brahmavihāras are two practices that look identical from the outside. The mind is doing the same thing, the same warmth, the same expansiveness, the same boundless awareness. The difference is what you do when the mind is resting in that state. If you stay there, enjoy it, want more of it. The practice leads to a very long, very beautiful stay in the celestial world. If you turn insight onto that same state, if you see even that as impermanent, conditioned, not self, the same practice becomes a path to non-return. Same heart, different lens. The brahmavihāras are the vehicle. Insight is what makes the vehicle go all the way. One more passage to put in place before we turn to the four practices individually. Samyutta Nikaya 46.54. In SN 46.54, the Buddha describes the brahmavihāras developed not on their own, but together with the 7 factors of awakening, the bojjhangas: mindfulness, investigation, energy, joy, tranquility, concentration, equanimity, the standard path factors of insight. When the brahmavihāras are developed in this way, the Buddha says, they no longer lead to the Brahma worlds at all. They lead instead to specific attainments along the path to awakening. Metta, developed with the awakening factors, the sutta says, leads to the beautiful. Subha, karuna, leads to the sphere of the infinitude of space. Mudita, to the sphere of the infinitude of consciousness. Upekkha, to the sphere of nothingness. The technical names matter less than the structural point. SN 46.54 confirms, explicitly in canonical text, that the brahmavihāras are not merely pleasant abidings to take a vacation in. They are path factors. Developed with insight, with the awakening factors, they become legs of the very path that ends samsara. The four practices are not separate from the rest of Buddhism. They are integrated into the architecture of awakening itself. So the system is real. The architecture is real. The canon itself demonstrates it. One identical formula, 4 expressions, one path that can either rest in the conditioned or break through it. But each of the 4 has its own character. Each addresses a different posture the human heart can take. Each has its own particular strength and its own particular failure mode. To understand the system, we now have to look at the 4 in turn. Chapter 2. the 4 in detail. We have met the first of these 4 before. Video 22 of this channel was devoted to metta, what we are now calling goodwill. So tonight, metta gets the briefest treatment, with 2 canonical features we did not have time for then. Recall the distinction Ṭhānissaro draws. Metta is not a feeling. It is a wish, an intention. May they be happy. It is precisely not what the Pali calls prema, personal affection, the kind that picks out a particular someone and may turn into resentment when that someone disappoints. Goodwill does not depend on the specific someone. It is structural, a wish for happiness extended unconditionally. The clearest canonical instruction for cultivating metta is in S&P 1.8, the Karuṇā Metta Sutta. The most quoted line uses the image of a mother and her only child. In the Amaravati Sangha's translation, the simile reads conventionally, just as a mother would protect her only child at the risk of her own life, so should one cultivate a boundless heart toward all beings. The mother's love is the model. Love all beings as a mother loves her only child. Ṭhānissaro reads the simile differently. In his translation, the parallel is not between the child and all beings. It is between the child and one's cultivation of goodwill itself. Your goodwill is what you protect with the care a mother gives her only child. The cultivation is the child. Guard it that carefully. Both readings work in the Pali. The choice between them is not trivial. One tells you to love like a mother. The other tells you to protect your love like a mother protects her child. But the line itself is genuinely ambiguous. The canon attributes 11 benefits to the practice of metta, listed in AN 11.16. The one who develops metta sleeps well, wakes well, has no bad dreams, is dear to human beings, is dear to non-human beings, is protected by the devas, is untouched by fire, poison, or weapons, gains concentration quickly, the complexion is bright, dies unconfused, and, if no higher attainment has been reached, is reborn in the Brahma world. That 7th benefit, protection from fire, poison, and weapons, is striking enough that elsewhere in the canon, metta appears specifically as a protective practice against danger. Metta is the protection brahmavihāra in a way the others are not. The canon does not say the same things about karuna, mudita, or upekkha. Now to karuna. The standard translation is compassion. The simplest definition. Karuna is what arises in the heart when it touches the suffering of another being and does not turn away. The does not turn away is doing the work. The mind that sees suffering has 3 options. It can identify with the suffering and be consumed by it. Sympathetic distress, the heart breaking under the weight. It can recoil from the suffering. The closed eye protection, the closing of the door, what we sometimes call compassion fatigue. Or it can stay present with the suffering. Fully present, fully aware, without being broken by it, and without turning away. The third is karuna. The canon gives a clean functional description in MN 62. When karuna is developed, cruelty, vihimsa, is abandoned. The 4 brahmavihāras in MN 62 are presented as antidotes. Each undoes a particular contraction of the heart. Metta undoes ill will. Karuna undoes cruelty. That pairing is exact in the canon. It is not karuna undoes sadness or karuna undoes apathy. It is karuna undoes the impulse to harm. Because in the Buddhist reading, cruelty is what closes the gap. Cruelty is what allows the heart to see suffering and not respond. Karuna is what holds the gap open. Now, karuna has what the commentators call a near enemy and a far enemy. Here we cross over from canon into commentary, and I want to mark the line explicitly. The technical terms near enemy, asana pakatika, and far enemy, dura pakatika, do not appear in the 5 Nikayas. They appear in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, the great Sri Lankan meditation manual compiled by Buddhaghosa in roughly the 5th century of the Common Era. This system of paired enemies is one of Buddhaghosa's most enduring contributions to Buddhist meditation theory. It is influential, it is useful, and it is commentary, not canon, according to Buddhaghosa's Visuddhimagga. Chapter 9. The near enemy of karuna is domanassa, worldly grief, sorrow. The far enemy is vihimsa, cruelty. The same enemy, MN 62, identifies. The far enemy is the obvious one. Cruelty is karuna's clear opposite, but the near enemy, worldly grief, is more interesting because it pretends to be karuna. The mother who is destroyed by her child's pain, the nurse who cannot sleep at night because of what she sees in the hospital, the activist who burns out. These look like karuna. They feel like karuna. They share something with karuna. They have stayed present with the suffering, but they have crossed into different territory. The heart has been overwhelmed. It has begun to drown. This is what modern teachers call compassion fatigue. The framing as fatigue is contemporary. The structural insight that there is a mode of caring about suffering that destroys the carer was already present in Buddhaghosa's distinction. Worldly grief is the near enemy of compassion because it appears to be a deeper form of caring. It is, in fact, the form of caring that fails first. Karuna, properly understood, is the compassion that can stay in the room with suffering without being destroyed by it. Not, I feel your pain, and now I am drowning too. Presence that does not flinch and does not collapse. The traditional image is sometimes the mother who keeps tending to her sick child through the long night, fully present, fully concerned, but not falling apart. The child needs a mother, not another patient. We come now to the practice with the smallest canonical footprint and the largest practical problem. Mudita. The English translations vary. Bhikkhu Bodhi renders it sympathetic joy. Ṭhānissaro sometimes uses empathetic joy, sometimes simply appreciation. Other teachers say appreciative joy or joy in the goodness of others. The general meaning is consistent across translators. Mudita is the quality of the heart that takes joy in another's happiness. The friend gets the promotion. The neighbor's child graduates. The colleague's project succeeds. Mudita is the warm response. Your face brightening, your heart lifting. The spontaneous, oh, that's wonderful, that arises before any thought of yourself. That is when mudita is present. Here is where the practical problem comes in. For most human beings, most of the time, what arises when someone else succeeds is not entirely mudita. There is some mudita. Most of us are not monsters, but there is, mixed in with the mudita, something else. A small shadow, a small flicker of comparison. The promotion that should have been yours. The colleague whose project succeeds visibly while yours struggles invisibly. The friend whose relationship thrives while you are lonely. The practitioner in the next cushion whose meditation visibly deepens. The heart has a difficulty here. The traditional framing, and this is modern narration, not the canon, is that the human heart tends to operate, at least at the everyday level, as if the supply of good things in the world were limited, as if your friend's success took something from yours, as if the well of goodness is a zero-sum well. This framing is not in the suttas. It is the way centuries of practitioners have described why mudita turns out to require practice, more practice than most of us would have guessed before attempting it. If you have ever felt that small shadow when a friend succeeded, that is exactly what mudita is being asked to illuminate. Now, here is where the canonical situation becomes strange. We have spent some time on metta, with the 11 benefits, and the SNP 1.8, sutta, and the protection teachings. We have spent time on karuna, with the pairing in MN 62, and the deep commentarial elaboration of the near and far enemies when we turn to mudita and ask what the Buddha said specifically about cultivating this practice. We find essentially one line. The line is in the same sutta we keep returning to, AMN 62, Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. Develop the meditation of appreciative joy. For when you are developing the meditation of appreciative joy, discontent will be abandoned. That is it. One sentence. The Buddha gave mudita one canonical instruction. Develop the meditation of appreciative joy and resentment. What the Pali calls arati, the discontent that arises about others' good fortune, will be abandoned. Everything else we know about mudita meditation, the specific near enemy, the systematic cultivation sequence, the choice of which person to start with, comes from later sources, primarily from Buddhaghosa's Visuddhimagga. Let me mark this explicitly. According to Buddhaghosa, Visuddhimagga, Chapter 9, the near enemy of mudita is bhasa, a kind of excitement or exuberance based on worldly delight. The far enemy is arati, discontent, resentment, which is precisely what the canonical line in MN 62 identifies. So far, the commentarial system is extending and systematizing the canonical seed. Buddhaghosa then offers a method for cultivating mudita that has become standard teaching in meditation halls around the world. He suggests beginning the practice with what he calls a boon companion, a very dear friend who has experienced obvious good fortune. The heart finds it easiest to rejoice for them. From there, the practitioner gradually extends the practice to a neutral person, then to a difficult person, then to all beings. This graduated method is, again, Buddhaghosa's, not the Buddha's. It is from the 5th century, not from the suttas. This commentarial elaboration is one of the most influential teachings in all of Buddhism. Millions of practitioners have used it. Whole meditation traditions are built on it. It is not invalid. It is profound. It is also not from the Buddha. The fact that mudita has so little canonical instruction is itself a teaching. The Buddha told us what mudita dispels: resentment. He told us, structurally, that mudita shares the immeasurable formula with the other three. He told us that mudita developed with the awakening factors leads to the sphere of infinite consciousness. And then he left the rest to us, to centuries of teachers, to Buddhaghosa, to the practical experience of practitioners who tried it and discovered on their own what works. The orphan status of mudita in the canon is, in this reading, not an oversight. It is an invitation. Now the fourth and last, upekkha. Upekkha is the practice most often misunderstood in the West. The standard translation is equanimity, and the standard misreading is not caring. Stepping back, distance, the cool, unaffected gaze of someone who has decided not to invest emotionally in the world. This is not what upekkha means, at least not as a brahmavihāra. The misreading was, in fact, anticipated by Buddhaghosa, who gave it a name. In the Visuddhimagga, Chapter 9, Buddhaghosa identifies the near enemy of upekkha as what he calls equanimity of unknowing, the dull indifference that looks calm on the outside because the inside has gone numb. This commentarial distinction is essential because it points at exactly the trap most Western readers fall into, the cool, detached gaze that does not care. That is the near enemy, the imposter. The real upekkha is something else. What is the real upekkha? In the brahmavihāra context, upekkha is an even-minded engagement with all beings. The even-minded part is critical. The mind that holds all beings in the same regard, without the pull of attachment that distinguishes my people from those people, and without the push of aversion that turns against anyone the heart finds difficult. The engagement part is critical too. This is not standing back from the world. This is staying in full contact with all beings and remaining unshaken. The ground that allows this, the canonical ground, not the commentarial framing, is the understanding that beings inherit their own karma. Each being is the heir of their own intentional actions. Your friend's suffering, your enemy's success, your child's struggle, your own difficulty. These all arise from causes, conditions, intentions. They are not your possessions. They are situations to meet with goodwill, compassion, and joy where appropriate, and with equanimity that does not collapse when the meeting does not produce the result you hoped for. This is why teachers often say upekkha completes the system, though the framing of the four as a system is itself a modern synthesis, which we will examine in the next chapter. For now, the structural observation. Metta alone, without upekkha, can tip into attachment. The goodwill that wants its objects to be a particular way, karuna alone, without upekkha, can drown in worldly grief. Mudita alone, without upekkha, can become sentimental excitement, joy that needs its objects to keep succeeding. Upekkha is what holds the other three steady when their natural objects do not cooperate. A note: upekkha shows up in several different places in the canon, with related but not identical meanings. There is brahmavihāra upekkha, the relational equanimity we have been describing. There is jhana upekkha, the equanimity that arises in the fourth meditative absorption. And there is bojjhanga upekkha, equanimity as one of the 7 factors of awakening. The Pali word is the same. The technical meaning shifts with context. The relational kind is the one we are concerned with tonight. What this upekkha provides is the ground from which the other 3 can act without being consumed. The heart with metta, karuna, and mudita, but no upekkha, is a heart that loves passionately but cannot bear the world's failures. The heart with upekkha alone is a heart that has become a stone. The full system is the heart that loves the entire cosmos and is not shaken when the entire cosmos does not love it back. Equanimity is not the same as not caring. It is caring completely about all beings, without the pull of attachment or the push of aversion. Upekkha does not step back from the suffering of the world. It stays in full contact and remains unshaken. That is what makes the rest of the system sustainable. So those are the four orientations of the heart, each addressing a different posture, each with its own canonical anchor, its own commentarial elaboration, its own near and far enemies. But the question we opened with, why all 4? Why this particular system? Has only been partly answered. The full answer requires us to ask, who built this system? And what does it tell us about the heart that needs it? Chapter 3. The System and its Origins. We have referred several times now to the brahmavihāras as a system, the 4 orientations that complete and correct each other. The architecture of metta balanced by upekkha, karuna balanced by upekkha, mudita balanced by upekkha, and all 4 standing together as a complete relational practice. It is worth saying explicitly where this framing comes from, because the framing of the 4 as a system with this particular logic of mutual correction is not in the Pali Canon in this form. The Buddha gave us the 4. He gave us the identical pervasion formula across all 4. He gave us the antidote pairings in MN 62. He told us in SN 46.54 that all four developed with the awakening factors lead to attainment. He did not write the essay that says, "Here is why all four are needed and how they protect each other from their own failure modes." That essay was written, in a sense, twice. The first writing is in Buddhaghosa's Visuddhimagga, chapter 9, the 5th century. Buddhaghosa systematized the four with the near enemy/far enemy structure we have already encountered. The second writing is much closer to us. In 1958, the German-born monk Nyanaponika Thera, living in Sri Lanka, published a small essay called The Four Sublime States in the Buddhist Publication Society's Wheel Series, number 6. That essay is, perhaps more than any single canonical or commentarial text, the source of the way the brahmavihāras are taught in the modern West. When you hear a contemporary teacher say, metta without upekkha becomes attachment, or karuna without upekkha becomes overwhelm, you are hearing Nyanaponika's articulation more than you are hearing the Buddha's words. This does not make the framing less true. It is a synthesis built on canonical raw materials by careful teachers refined across centuries, but it is a synthesis, and honesty requires us to name it. The structural observation behind the synthesis is sound. Each of the four practices, taken alone, has a characteristic failure mode. The failure mode is not a flaw in the practice. It is the natural direction the practice tends when it is not balanced by the others. Metta alone tends toward attachment. The wish for happiness, extended without the steady ground of equanimity, can become a demand. The practitioner of metta who has not developed upekkha may find that "may they be happy" gradually becomes "may they be happy in the way I think they should be happy." And when the world does not cooperate, the wish curdles into disappointment. Goodwill without equanimity is goodwill that wants results. Karuna alone tends toward overwhelm. We have already spoken of this. The heart that touches suffering and does not have the ground to remain present. The helper who collapses into the suffering of the helped. Karuna without upekkha is the compassion that drowns. Mudita alone tends toward sentimental excitement. The joy at another's good fortune, without the ground that holds steady through its absence, becomes joy that needs constant feeding. Mudita without upekkha is joy that depends on others continuing to succeed, and upekkha alone. Equanimity without the warmth of the other three tends toward cold indifference. The equanimity of unknowing that Buddhaghosa named. The numbness that looks like wisdom from the outside. Upekkha without metta, karuna, and mudita is a stone, not a saint. The canonical seed for this whole architecture sits in a single passage, MM N 62. The Greater Discourse to Rahula. The Buddha is instructing his son, who has just been ordained. He gives Rahula the four brahmavihāras as a series of antidotes. Metta against ill will, karuna against cruelty, mudita against discontent, upekkha against aversion. This functional grouping, these specific practices undoing these specific contractions of the heart, is canonical. The Buddha grouped them. The Buddha paired them with their counterstates. The systematic elaboration of why all four are needed together is later. But the seed is in N 62, where a father tells his son, these four, against these four. Plant these. There is one more canonical anchor before we close. The question of who exactly these practices extend to. The pervasion formula from AN 4.125, remember, is geometric. First direction, second, third, fourth, above, below, all around. No exception clause. The radiation is total. The Buddha makes this explicit in one of the most famous passages in the canon. The simile of the saw, the Kakakapama Sutta, MN 21. The image is extreme. The Buddha tells his monks, even if bandits were to sever you savagely limb by limb with a two-handled saw, he who gave rise to a mind of hate towards them would not be carrying out my teaching. The disciples' response, the sutta says, must be, we shall abide compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. This is the canonical principle. Even the person who is destroying you is to be held in the field of metta and karuna. The inclusion of enemies is not a stretch in the brahmavihara system. It is the system. In the canonical form, no exception. But, and this matters, the canon does not give a method for getting there. It states the principle. It does not stage the cultivation. The staged method, the one that begins with a loved one and works gradually toward a difficult person, comes from, and you know where this is going, Buddhaghosa's Visuddhimagga. Buddhaghosa proposed that the practitioner who tries to extend metta directly to a person who has caused great harm will find the practice impossible at first. So Buddhaghosa offered a progression. Start with yourself, or with a benefactor. Move outward to a beloved person, then a neutral person, then finally, the difficult person, then to all beings without distinction. This method has been the standard approach to metta meditation in Theravada practice for 1500 years. It is wise, psychologically sophisticated, and works. It is also Buddhaghosa's, not the Buddha's. The Buddha gave the principle. Buddhaghosa gave the stairway. The distinction matters. The principle in MN 21 does not let you off the hook. The method in the Visuddhimagga gives you a humane way to get there. Together, they are powerful. The principle holds you to the standard. The method gets you to the standard. A few weeks ago, we explored a different architecture of love. Rumi's love, the Sufi path of Ṭhāna, annihilation in the divine beloved, the love that concentrates toward one until the self dissolves into it. Hold the two next to each other, briefly, before we close. The brahmavihāra love does not have a beloved. It does not concentrate. It expands. The pervasion formula does not direct love at one point of intensity. It spreads love evenly across every direction. The mathematics is different. Rumi's love is a vector pointing inward, toward a center. The brahmavihara love is a field, with no center and no edge. The destinations are different too. Rumi's love, at its full intensity, dissolves the lover into the beloved. The two become one. The brahmavihara practice, at its full intensity, when AN 4.126 is applied, does not dissolve the practitioner into anything. It sees through even the practitioner, not union, release. It would be easy to say these are two reports of the same underlying experience, two languages for the same mystical state. The scholar Stephen Katz, in his 1978 essay, Language, Epistemology, and Mysticism, argued forcefully against that reading. There are, Katz wrote, no pure unmediated experiences. The Sufi's experience is shaped, before it even arises, by Sufi concepts, practices, language. The Buddhist brahmavihara practitioner's experience is shaped similarly by Buddhist concepts, practices, language. They are not two reports of one underlying reality. They are two genuinely different experiences in two genuinely different traditions. Rumi's love needs a beloved. The brahmavihara needs only a being, any being. The Sufi intensifies love toward one until the self dissolves into it. The Buddhist universalizes goodwill toward all and then sees through even the experiencer of that goodwill. Same human territory, different maps, both pointing at something real. The system we have built tonight does not stand alone. It connects through several threads to other places this channel has gone. You have met Metta before, video 22 of this channel. Tonight you have met the system Metta belongs to. The first practice is not the whole architecture. The whole architecture includes 3 more orientations that Metta alone can't supply. When we spoke about loneliness, video 30, the practice we leaned on was Metta, because Metta works in an empty room. It radiates outward without needing a particular recipient to receive it. The brahmavihāra system extends that. The same architecture that works in solitude also works in every relational situation. With strangers, friends, difficult people, all of them, all at once. The roomy contrast we have just drawn extends video 35. 2 architectures of love, both pointing at something real, neither superior to the other. You will recognize in the AN 4.126 turn from chapter 1, the brahmavihara practiced with insight, leading to non-return. The same destination this channel mapped in video 31, where we walked through the stages of awakening and the fetters dropped along the way. Tonight's practice is one of the paths that reaches that destination, and there is one more connection that may not be obvious. Several weeks ago, we looked at the Emperor Ashoka, video 36, and his attempt to institutionalize, through edicts carved into stone across an empire, an ethic of care for all beings, of every tradition, of every conviction. What Ashoka attempted to embody at the level of the state machinery is, in a way, what the brahmavihāras are as inner practice. The 4 orientations are, in miniature, what an ecumenical empire would look like at the scale of one human heart. Boundless, without distinction, without exception. So that is the system. 1 template, 4 expressions, a canonical seed in MN 62, a commentarial elaboration in Buddhaghosa, a modern synthesis in Nyanaponika Thera, a canonical anchor for universality in MN 21, a method for getting there in the Visuddhimagga, and at the end, the fork, practiced alone, the most beautiful dead end, practiced with insight applied to the practice itself, the path to non-return. What remains is the practice itself, the actual cultivation, the pervasion in every direction, in every respect, of an awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, the close. Close. This is not a practice about feeling warmer toward the people you already like. It is not even, at its core, a practice about love in the sentimental sense. Though it produces warmth, and it produces tenderness, and it transforms the heart in ways that any human being would recognize as love. What the brahmavihāras actually are is something more structural. They are the systematic expansion of the heart beyond its natural contractions, beyond my people, beyond my circle, beyond beings like me, beyond the ones who have earned my care. The pervasion formula does not care about any of these distinctions. The pervasion formula simply expands. First direction, second, third, fourth, above, below, all around, until the heart has no edges, until there is no place in the cosmos where the warmth has not reached, until the question, but what about those people, has no answer, because there are no longer any those people. There is only the field of beings, and the field is everywhere. And this is where the practice becomes Buddhist rather than merely beautiful. The practice does not stop there. It would be enough, on its own terms, to reach that state of boundless awareness. It would be more than enough. It would be the highest of the Brahma worlds. 500 eons of upekkha, in the realm of the devas of great fruit. A destination that no other religious tradition would describe as anything less than complete. The Buddha did not describe it as complete. The Buddha said, "Take that boundless, immeasurable, exalted awareness, the one you have just built through years of careful practice, through patient extension across every direction, and see it. See it as you would see anything else in the world. See it as impermanent. See it as conditioned. See it as not self." This is what AN 4.126 asks, not to hold the boundless awareness, to let even it be released. The heart that has expanded to the cosmos releases its grip on its own expansion. What remains after that release is what the Buddha called the destination of the non-returner, the pure abodes, from which there is no falling back into samsara, and beyond even that, what the Buddha pointed toward with several words, but most often with a single one, the unbound, nibbana, the end of the wheel. In one of the most often cited passages on the subject, UD 8.3, in Ṭhānissaro's translation, the Buddha put it this way: "There is, monks, an unborn, an unbecome, an unmade, an unfabricated." Because there is such a thing, the Buddha said, an escape from the world of birth, becoming, making, and fabrication can be discerned. Without it, no escape. The brahmavihāras, practiced as Buddhism asks them to be practiced, with the immeasurable cultivated and then released, are one of the paths that points there. That is the architecture. That is the spine that holds all four practices together. Metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, and turns them at the final move into a vehicle that does not stop at the gates of the celestial worlds, but passes through them, towards something the celestial worlds themselves do not contain. What does this mean for someone sitting in a room tonight, beginning the practice? It means the practice is bigger than you might have thought. The cultivation of metta, if you have been doing it, is not just a way to feel a little better or to be a little kinder. It is one of the legs of the path. Karuna is not just sympathy. Mudita is not just a corrective for envy. Upekkha is not just a buffer against burnout. Each of them, properly developed, opens onto something larger. The smaller benefits are real. Sleep comes more easily. Anger becomes less frequent. Relationships steady. The 11 benefits of AN 11.16 are not fiction. They will all happen in time to anyone who develops metta with consistency. But they are the side effects of a practice whose main object is the systematic expansion of the heart toward what the Buddha called the unbound. Hear the pervasion formula once more. Hear it differently now, pervading the first direction, the second, the third, the fourth, above, below, all around, everywhere, and in every respect the all-encompassing cosmos, with an awareness imbued with goodwill, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will. That is the practice, 4 times in the canon, 4 expressions of one act, one template, 4 faces of a single architecture, above, below, all around, everywhere, in its entirety, abundant, expansive, immeasurable, free from hostility, free from ill will.